Ms. Houlahan, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us today. I want to join my colleagues in thanking you for your service. I, too, served in the military, and so I'm enormously grateful for the safety and security that you provide all of us when we're home. My questions are going to be focusing primarily on communications and radio protocol, and so I'm confident or somewhat confident that I know to whom to direct these, but if you have any insider input into it, please feel free to chime in. I want to start with Mr. Sergeant Lentz. Understand that you are the commander of the Butler County Emergency Services Unit, and as commander, my understanding is you were in the local command trailer, along with your deputy commander and representatives from the Butler County Sheriff's Department and the Butler Township Police Department, as well as, of course, the emergency services on that day. Meanwhile, my understanding is that the Secret Service security room included representatives from the Secret Service, from the state police, and also from the Butler County Emergency Services. Just to start, is that a fairly accurate portrayal of who was where then?
Yes.
Perfect. Can you describe then some of the radio frequencies that were used by those various agencies? And I'll start with the Butler Police Department. What frequencies were they operating under?
Sure. So the Butler Township Police Department was using a channel we call PD Ops 3, which was an operations channel just for the township units performing traffic control duties. The tactical police units, we were using PD Ops 4, and the sheriff's office was using the sheriff's operations channel.
And my understanding there were also frequencies 1 and 2 for units that were not working at the rally as well. Is that correct?
Correct. PD1 is for patrol units that would cover the southern part of the county, and PD2 would be the northern part of the county.
And were local officers able to listen to other radio frequencies that day, other than the ones that you just outlined?
No. So we were able to hear our Butler County channels only.
And could you talk a little bit about the state troopers as well? What frequencies were they listening to?
The only thing I can really speak to on the state police radio is we did have one in the county command post. It was a portable radio, but the newer radios seem to operate more like a cell phone, and if you don't have a connection to the tower, then they just don't work. So we had some issues hearing anything from that radio throughout the day.
So you had issues communicating with the state police, and my understanding is they were on a different radio system from you.
Correct, and they are on a separate radio system. I'm sure Lieutenant can echo better what they actually were using.
Do you know if the Secret Service, again in a different area, was able to listen to your local radio frequencies that day?
So there would have been an encrypted police radio in the command center. I believe it was being used by the emergency services side, so fire and EMS, but I believe they treated around 250 patients for heat-related stuff that day. So that radio was nonstop. So even if that radio was scanning and had the capability to hear our channels, they would not have been able to do so just because of the amount of traffic.
Yes, when we were in Butler, that was my understanding, is that there were a couple hundred calls because it was such an incredibly hot day, and that, to your point, even if they had been able to listen to you, there was a lot of other chatter going on. And so, here we've got the local folks, the sheriff, the state police, all of whom have their own channels, and not all of whom are able to listen and hear to one another. Can you briefly talk a little bit about the Secret Service and whether or not you think they could hear you?
I do not believe they could hear us at all. They did not have a radio from us, and we did not have a radio from them. So, in the local command post, there was no way for us to hear any of the Secret Service radio traffic.
So for those of us who are of a certain age, I was in my early mid-20s during September 11th. This was almost exactly what I remember being the problem in terms of responding to September 11th, that there were all kinds of really well-intentioned, very well-trained people, but none of whom could hear one another or communicate with one another. It feels as though we haven't made a whole lot of progress on that. In your view, what would have been a better way to have this communication?
Sure, it's not feasible to have everybody communicate on the same channel just because of the amount of radio traffic. However, a unified command post, as we're all taught in many different FEMA classes, a unified command post solves that issue.
Yes, and I know Representative Crow started this conversation with sort of being aghast at the fact that there were clearly more than one command post, and that in some cases, my understanding is some people didn't even know that there were more than one command post, and so that's certainly a gap too. So here we were with 3 minutes and every second counting, and the Secret Service and the state police weren't able to directly hear what local law enforcement actually saw because they didn't have that interoperability with local law enforcement frequencies and didn't have possession of those radios. Given how important that communication is in communicating in a crisis, clearly one of the findings of our investigation ought to be that there needs to be certainly reform in terms of the technological communications that are going on here. My colleagues had a little bit of extra time, and with my remaining time, I'd like to ask a question about the drones. I understand that the drone technology that the Secret Service had didn't work that day. My understanding is that the person who was trying to assassinate the former president's technology did work that day. The last question that I have for you is we're always trying to solve for the last problem that we had, a shooter, a sniper. To me, we should be solving for the future problems that we aren't seeing coming around the corner, and those are emerging threats, evolving threats such as drone technologies. Gentlemen, do you have anything that keeps you up at night that isn't sort of the traditional sniper on a rooftop?
Yeah, I believe that we've probably all considered the emerging threat that would be coming from a drone. I would say at our level, I have no means to mitigate that at this point.
And that's actually something that we can also help with, and Congress has pieces of legislation, myself included, that address the authorities that you need to have to be able to combat what I think is an increasing threat from things like drones. I thank you very much for your testimony, and thank you very much again for your service. And with that, I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady.